On this Thursday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, a 2K26 simulation has me asking the big questions. What if the Memphis Grizzlies actually miss the playoffs? What if Ja Morant does indeed return to all NBA form? And then back here in the real world, Santi Aldama continues to hoop, even though it may be for a Spain side that is overmatched over at EuroBasket. It's a Thursday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Thursday. You've got to get down on Thursday. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it. I apologize. I'm here a day early because I'm not going to be able to get the Friday show. My wonderful partner, DeMichael Cole, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for Commercial Appeal, he is on a well-deserved vacation ahead of the craziness that is the 2025-2026 NBA season. So it is I, Joe Mullinax, closing out our week here on Locked On Grizzlies a day early. I hope you'll forgive me, and I'm so glad that you're joining us wherever you check out podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is closer than you think, and right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets. Download the FanDuel.com app to get started. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. As proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Google, literally anywhere you get a podcast. You should be subscribing, checking out Locked On Grizzlies, being every day or each and every time that an episode drops. We are going back to 5 episodes a week next week. Very exciting. So we're taking advantage of our last little bit of a break here, 3-day weekend. And DeMichael and I will be back with you each and every day here on Locked On Grizzlies starting on September 8th. Looking forward to that, being back with you. Looking forward to continuing our grind, our trudge, if you will, toward the NBA regular season. And we've reached the portion of the offseason where we start talking about NBA 2K simulations, okay? And usually I wouldn't do this, all right? I want to stress that. I love video games. I play various games to this day, even as I approach 40 years old. So this is not a judgment on video games. It is a judgment on using them for content on a podcast. However, I thought that a simulation that was run by my colleague over at Locked On NBA podcast, Mr. Matt George, he is the Locked On Kings host for that show. I thought a simulation that he did was so fascinating from a Grizzlies perspective that I had to do a couple of segments on today's show about it, because the disproportionality of it, the disconnectedness, for me at least, it was a bit of a mind bend, a mind you-know-what, if you will. And we're going to start with the bad news for the Memphis Grizzlies, according to NBA 2K26, at least according to this simulation. The Memphis Grizzlies, according to this video game, do not make the Western Conference playoffs. They don't make it at all. So we are talking about teams like the New Orleans Pelicans, the Sacramento Kings, jumping in front of Memphis and replacing them in the playoff conversation. San Antonio Spurs being there as well. Holy crap. What a nightmare that would be for the Memphis Grizzlies. And it got me thinking, as a lot of these things do, what actually would occur in Memphis to the Grizzlies if such a failure were to happen? I honestly don't know at this stage of the game. I think I know. I think I know what I would want to see happen. I think that you have to move on from Zach Kleiman, Memphis Grizzlies general manager. I think that you have to have somebody's head roll, and you just hired Tuomas Isalo. But at the same time, if you are moving on from a general manager, somebody who has complete basketball control, wouldn't the next person you hire want to have some semblance of say into who the head basketball coach is? So what would that mean for Tuomas Isalo? Is it too early in the game literally and figuratively, for the Grizzlies to even be considering that sort of thing? Does this kind of hire buy Zach Kleiman time, even in the disaster event of the Grizzlies missing the postseason entirely? I want to stress, the Grizzlies don't even make the play-in. They're not a 7 or 8 seed. They are out entirely. They are out entirely. That would be an unmitigated disaster. But given the current state of play in the Western Conference, the way that some teams have improved, it's hard to argue that the Grizzlies have improved. It's hard to see Memphis not make the playoffs, but it's possible. We've talked about that here on the show before. I've said that the Grizzlies are closer to a play-in team than a playoff team. Part of being a play-in team is you might lose. And what happens then? Who gets the blame? Ja Morant, spoiler alert, is not the reason that the Grizzlies don't make the playoffs in this 2K simulation from Matt George of Locked On Kings. It is with Ja playing a substantial amount of basketball, and we'll talk more about that here in a minute. But the Grizzlies missed the playoffs. Do you make a trade involving Jaren Jackson Jr. at that point? Do you make a trade involving Ja Morant at that point? How can you say that this team moving forward is going in the right direction? I don't know that you can. And that retooling argument that has been made, the tool might be the front office, unfortunately, because you're looking at a roster that, according to this video game, was not capable of putting out a playoff contending team. Now, again, it is early September. How much weight should be put on a simulation of a video game in terms of what's actually going to happen in real life? Not a ton. But I did want to pose the question to you, dear listener, dear viewer. What do you think happens in that space? It's fascinating to me because I honestly don't know. I don't know. It would make sense that you would move on from the GM, but like I said a moment ago, you just hired a new coach. It would make sense to move on from a player or two, but they just re-signed Jaren Jackson Jr., and you're probably not trading Ja Morant. So this is that purgatory that you often hear NBA personalities, media types, fans talk about, the in-between, where the Grizzlies are not going to be good enough to contend, but they also may not be bad enough, although in this case they would be. They may not be bad enough to be a lottery team. And the Phoenix Suns didn't make the playoffs either. So Memphis in this scenario would have 2 lottery picks. Guess there's worse things. But you're talking about a Ja and Jaren title contending window that maybe we shouldn't be calling a title contending window anymore. They're entering their prime is probably a better way to put it. But how many years of the primes of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. do you want to spend on this retooling process? And who should shoulder the blame if this video game hypothetical comes to pass? Have the Memphis Grizzlies painted themselves into a corner where you can't really blame anybody? You can't have a movement forward because everything has been lateral or slightly stepped back with the idea of gaining ground down the road. Is it all going according to plan? How can we realistically judge this team if you are implementing a new head coach and you moved on from Desmond Bane? And if you can realistically judge them, which in my opinion, it's fair game to do so, if it comes to this, how do you pull the trigger on a move to move on without disrupting a first-year head coach, without trading away somebody that just signed an extension, without moving on from a superstar caliber player who, according to the same video game that I'm having a mild panic attack about because the Memphis Grizzlies didn't make the postseason, Ja Morant was an all-NBA player. Ja Morant makes 3rd team all-NBA, and yet the Memphis Grizzlies missed the playoffs entirely. That's where I'm struggling the most, dear listener, dear viewer. I've said all along, if Ja Morant is there and playing at an all-NBA level, the Grizzlies are a playoff team. NBA 2K26 disagrees. We'll talk about how that could be and how Ja can get to that all-NBA moniker coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here. You can taste it. FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however I personally want to bet on any given day. Player props, building a same-game parlay, jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just trying to keep an eye on your fantasy lineup. Plus, it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sunday. Are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. So if you aren't every day to Locked On Grizzlies, you know this to be true. When I am on the show, and it's my busiest time of year, but when I'm here, at least once an episode, I'm probably good to say the following. If Ja Morant isn't on the court, nothing else matters. And I still stand by that statement because I think it's rooted in logic. Ja Morant is the best player on the Memphis Grizzlies. At least he's the most important player on the Memphis Grizzlies. If you want to make the argument that Jaren is better than Ja at this point, I respectfully disagree with you, but I at least could understand where you're coming from. I think Ja is the best player on the team. He's certainly the most important. And if Ja Morant plays 65-plus games and he plays at an all-star level, an all-NBA level, I believe the Memphis Grizzlies make the playoffs. NBA 2K26 disagrees. Again, this is Matt George, Locked On Kings podcast host. Thank you so much for passing along this simulation. He passed along, according to his video game, how the all-NBA teams would shake out. First team, SGA, Nikola Jokic, Victor Wembanyama, Luka Doncic, Trae Young. Might be another clue that this is just a video game simulation. Second team, Giannis, Domantas Sabonis. Wow. Tyrese Halliburton, obviously injured, so that kind of shows you the flaw in the game there. Anthony Edwards and James Harden. Third team, LeBron James, Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, again, injured. Shows you the flaw. Jamal Murray and Ja Morant. So Ja Morant is an all-NBA player, yet the Grizzlies missed the playoffs. Ja Morant is one of the top 15 contributors in an NBA video game dynamic where apparently Achilles injuries don't exist. Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum are on the court, balling out. Makes you wonder what happened to Joel Embiid, the video game version. And yet there's Ja doing exactly what I have said here, there, and everywhere he's going to do. He's going to be the man. He's going to be on the court. He's going to be the lead straw in the drink of the Memphis Grizzlies. He gets all NBA, and yet Memphis misses the playoffs. How is that possible? Well, I think if there's injuries to other players, like a Jaren Jackson Jr., you can't completely write off the significance of what Jaren is on both ends of the court. If he's not there, then maybe the Grizzlies have some troubles. Obviously, there could be other injury concerns, other guys that are missing extended periods of time. If the Zach Edey ankle injury doesn't get recovered from in time for him to be back by mid to late October. If we're talking about a situation where a Gigi Jackson doesn't get fully back, if Cedric Coward has a recurring issue with his shoulder, there's ways to maybe get a little bit nervous and think, ooh, maybe the video game's on to something. But again, I keep coming back to all NBA Ja Morant. All NBA Ja Morant. That means this guy is putting up all-star numbers. That means this guy is having near a career year. And the Grizzlies still miss? How could that be? The only thing that really registered in my mind in terms of how this could be a possibility, outside of injuries, like actual basketball situations, Ja Morant being in a place where his usage is so high that he's not able to be the creator of offense for others that he once was. Maybe he puts up individual career numbers, but he is not the facilitator that he once was. He's not the guy that is out there prioritizing getting his teammates going. He falls so far to the side of I need to get mine to help this team win that he does so against what is actually best for the team. Ja Morant's not going to do that. right? That's not how Ja Morant operates. I've watched Ja Morant play basketball for 6 years now. Again, obviously off and on. He hasn't been on the court as much as we'd like to have been the last couple of years, but I've watched Ja Morant play a lot of basketball. That's not his game. I do think that Ja is smart enough to understand that sometimes the best play is his play, and he's going to have to make that play more consistently this season. At top of the league usage rate, would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form when it comes to Ja Morant for me this. But can he do that while measuring and marrying what matters most to the team? The Tuomas Isalo scheme of the screens leading to downhill dribble penetration, finding kickouts to open shooters, being patient within the sets. Is he going to get so connected to the idea of his shot being the best that he loses what made him great in the past? I don't think so, but that is just one way that I could see him being an all NBA contributor while the team loses enough to not be in the postseason. I think that Ja Morant has the capacity within his game to continue to show real signs of growth. He is an elite ball handler. It's nice to hear NBA 2K give Ja credit for that. And I also think, DeMichael has talked about this in the past on this show, that it's okay to acknowledge that players like Ja Morant that are freak athletes with great handles, they're kind of a cheat code in the game, right? Maybe video game Ja, is better than what reality will be. But if that was indeed the case, you would have imagined that the Grizzlies would have been better than what reality perhaps will be. And that was not the case in this game. So there's a disparity there. And I think that injury is the most clear-cut line to making such a situation come to life. But I also think it's important to point out and acknowledge that if Ja Morant plays at that level, the Grizzlies are going to be more competitive than a play-in team or a team that misses the play-in entirely. I don't see how that's possible, but outside of injury, because that Ja Morant does not have the capacity to be a selfish player. He can be more selfish. He can make the choice to get his own more consistently. But I do not think that Ja Morant, the basketball player, is going to allow team success to be sacrificed so that he can get his numbers. This isn't a LaMelo Ball situation. This is a young man who has had a lot of stuff go on these last couple of years, and he is very interested in reminding everyone just who in the heck he is. And all NBA recognition would do just that. You are seen as one of the top 15 or so players in the entire National Basketball Association. And he would take his claim that I still hold on to of him being the best player on the Memphis Grizzlies clearly back if he had the opportunity to do just this, making that all NBA team. I was really interested in this 2K simulation. I appreciate Matt George for passing it around. For those of you that are intrigued, Oklahoma City wins the NBA Cup. Not that you should be intrigued by that. The Minnesota Timberwolves win the NBA Finals, with Anthony Edwards winning the Finals MVP. LeBron James and Chris Paul retire at the end of this season, according to this simulation. There are only 2 trades at the trade deadline, neither of which involve the Grizzlies. Detroit got involved in 2 of those trades: Paul George, Kyle Lowry, Paul George, Kyle Lowry, and Steven Adams. Our old friend Steven Adams get acquired by the Rockets. Tobias Harris, Duncan Robinson, and Isaiah Stewart get shipped out in those deals. Mike Brown wins Coach of the Year. Malik Monk wins Sixth Man of the Year. This simulation really loved the Sacramento Kings, and I struggle with that. Looking at what Sacramento did in the offseason, I don't know how you could think they would be that much better. Harden winning Clutch Player of the Year, Wembanyama winning Defensive Player of the Year. That shouldn't be surprising. I mentioned that the Pelicans and the Kings are the West play-in teams. The Magic and the Raptors are the East play-in teams. Again, not really loving the Orlando Magic. Not really loving their offseason, which was admittedly, in my opinion, better than that of the Grizzlies. So these video game simulations are obviously imperfect. They're not something that should be taken for gospel. If you're really that mad after hearing the Grizzlies miss the playoffs because of an NBA 2K simulation done by somebody on the other end of the country, maybe you need to get a hobby that still involves you listening to Lock On Grizzlies. But I was surprised that what I have said all along, if Ja Morant's on the court, the Grizzlies are going to be good. The video game disagrees. Ja is good. The team is not. Are you agreeing with me? Do you think that is unlikely? Or do you see a path for a good Ja Morant season and a bad Grizzlies overall season? I don't see it, but maybe you do. Hit me up on X at Joe Mullinax. Let me know in the comments. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we will close out this edition of the show talking about Santi Aldama, another check-in with him, a tremendous job over at EuroBasket. Well-deserved praise and well needed or much needed opportunity for him to lead. We'll talk about that next. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, closing out this Thursday edition of the show. Again, this is our last episode for the week. DeMichael Cole off, I believe, in the Dominican Republic. Ooh la la. He's having a good time. Very excited for DeMichael as he takes his last big trip before the NBA season gets underway. I'm fairly busy this time of year with my day job as a football coach and a teacher. So knocking out this episode today, there will not be an episode the remainder of this week. We will be back on Monday. And again, on September 8th, we are back locked and loaded. Everyday episodes of Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're getting back into the groove with us here on Locked On Grizzlies as we embrace and embark on what will be a fascinating 2025-2026 season for Memphis if NBA 2K simulations have anything to say about it. Something that is not a simulation, it is actually quite real, is what is currently going on in Europe at EuroBasket and the hooping that is occurring on behalf of one Santi Aldama. The Spanish lost to Italy, so Spain is not quite what they've been in the past. That is important to point out. Again, Marc Gasol, Pau Gasol, they're not walking through that door. But it was not for a lack of effort from one Santi Aldama. 19 points, 4 assists, 10 rebounds in his game for Spain. I made a joke on X because the graphic that they chose, obviously Santi leads in all 3 categories for Spain: points, assists, and rebounds. So it's just 3 Santis. And I go, oh my God, they can clone people in Europe. This is crazy. It's funnier if you look at it on X at Joe Mullinax. I say, how the hell are you supposed to be allowed to clone people at EuroBasket? That's not fair. How's that legal? Santi Aldama is going to be a key cog for this Grizzlies team this season. We've talked about that a lot. What I loved seeing from Santi in this EuroBasket game and the highlights that I saw, I'm not going to pretend like I watched the whole game. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to insult you, dear listener, dear viewer, but I did watch highlights. I did do a little bit of research, a little bit of reading into Santi's game. It's the leadership. It's that same thing that we've talked about in the past, but in a different scope, in that we're seeing it come to fruition. Santi Aldama is the best player on this team. And when teams' best players are also their leaders, they're legitimate, those guys are going to follow this guy, there's real room for growth for your organization. There's real room for competition. There's real room for everything being at your feet in terms of being able to pursue what your goals are. And Santi Aldama is stepping up to the plate for Spain. Not always resulting in wins. We talked about Italy picking up the victory there. But it is extremely important to point out, at least to me, that Santi Aldama is being given an opportunity with the Spanish national team, and he is running with it. And it makes me feel better about asking Santi Aldama to perhaps do things that he has not been asked to do for the Memphis Grizzlies, like be a starter. We talked about Brandon Clark as the starter next to Jaren Jackson Jr. with Zach Edey likely out to start the season. Maybe we should reconsider. Maybe Jaren should be the 5 and Santi should be the 4. Maybe Santi is capable of a larger load in that way and higher rates of competition. Maybe we should give Santi a little more credit. Now, some of you in the comments last week, the last time we talked about Santi Aldama, you brought up how, you're falling for the Santi okie doke again, and he's not actually going to be what you think he's going to be. He is already what you think he is not. He is a good basketball player. He is an NBA high-end reserve, low-end starter caliber player. At his size, being able to score the basketball the way that he can. He is an improved rebounder. He's not elite there, but he's improved. He's an improved defender. Now, that's not saying a ton compared to where he started from as a defender, but he is better in that space. He's not the massive sieve that he was, the traffic cone that he was before. We're seeing growth in this young man. We're seeing him buy in to the opportunity that is being given to him, and he's doing his best to make the most of it. Doesn't mean that Spain is going to go on a run and win EuroBasket. Doesn't mean that we're going to have a Disney movie about how Santi Aldama turned the hard luck Spaniards around. But I do think it's okay to be excited watching this guy step up to the plate. You want them to compete. You want them to want to have this level of pride in their country because it's going to put them in a position where they are going to invest themselves more fully into preparations for the NBA season. Santi is going to come back to Memphis in the next few weeks in phenomenal shape, in game shape. FIBA basketball is different than NBA ball, but FIBA basketball is also different than playing in open gyms and running up and down empty courts that you sign out for 2 hours at a time so you can get open runs in with your friends. That is not what Santi Aldama is doing. He is putting himself out there into the arena. He is out there openly competing. He is saying, I want to carry the load for Spain. I want to be the standard bearer. And just because the team's not winning at the level that maybe they have in the past doesn't make that pursuit for Santi any less fruitful. Because it may not result in a EuroBasket championship, but it will result in much needed growth for him as a person, as a competitor, as an athlete, as a professional. And that's what Grizzlies fans should be excited about. That's what you should be watching him do what he's doing with EuroBasket and be so proud of. Santi Aldama is actively seeking out opportunities to be in positions where he is asked to do more. And if this Memphis Grizzlies team is going to avoid the fate of NBA 2K26 simulation by Locked On Kings host Matt George, and if the Grizzlies are going to make the postseason, they're going to need all the help they can get. And Santi Aldama is going to be one of the biggest pieces that are able to do the most to help Memphis achieve that goal and avoid that disaster. Thank you so much for being with me on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is much appreciated. Thanks for making us your first listen today. Now for your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything that you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As I mentioned earlier, we will be back to everyday episodes starting Monday, September 8th. We will be off the rest of this week. DeMichael enjoying some well-deserved time off before the season gets fully underway. Me with my busyness of my work day. But we will be back with you on Monday. Very excited, reevaluating where everything stands for the Grizzlies going into a very important preseason. Maybe some injury report updates, trying to find the pieces of what this team should be going into a preseason stretch that we hope to see Cedric Howard. We hope to see some of these young guys taking bigger leaps. Lots of different ways we can attack the next episode. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. Make sure you're with us the next time we are here on Locked On Grizzlies. That'll be on Monday. I will miss you terribly until then, but I ask that you continue to stick with us as we grind forth toward the preseason. Until then, I'm Joe Mullinax. See you next time on Locked On Grizzlies.